You are now listening to P.A.R. That's People Activity Radio.
If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you.
The hunt is on. And you're the prey.
You can't change the game.
Man lives in the sunlit world of what he believes to be reality. But there is, unseen by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side.
People in Mississippi are trying to fix their failing water infrastructure.
In Mississippi, the largest public corruption case in state history keeps unspooling tens of millions of dollars of welfare funds embezzled. Over the weekend, a court filing from former Governor Phil Bryant showed how football icon Brett Favre pressed officials for some of that welfare money to build a volleyball stadium for his daughter at the public University of Southern Mississippi.
When former NFL star Deion Sanders first broke into coaching college football, he made what seemed like an unusual choice. He took a coaching job at Jackson State University, a lower division team with a losing record in the decade before Sanders. This year, though, JSU came away with a 12-0 record, and that winning streak has brought a national spotlight to HBCU athletics. But next year, things will be different.
In coaching, you get elevated or you get terminated. So Doug was my hero, a black quarterback in Florida. You don't understand. Doug Williams was that dude.
Well, let me say this about Deion. I mean, what a lot of people don't know. Deion was coaching before he got there. He was coaching high school. So, when Deion came to Jackson, I had no problem with it. I do have a problem. I have a small problem with guys with big names and stuff like that, just coming in being a head coach with no coaching experience. I do have a problem with that. But because Deion had coached high school, coached his sons and all that, I had no problem with Deion coming to Jackson State. I thought that was a big plus to Jackson State and also a big plus to the SWAC. And I think it had proved to be what I thought it would be. Deion in there, man. And also it gives the other coaches something to shoot for, because right now Deion got the biggest target on his back. And everybody wants Jackson State. They're trying to find a way to beat Jackson State. And I think by what he has created at Jackson, make the whole conference that much better, from a standpoint of, man, that's where I want to get to. And it's a good opportunity for a lot of players who's in the transfer portal and other high school to understand that it's not about where you go all the time. It's about what you do wherever you go. And if you could play, and that's what we're trying to get the NFL to see, if you can play, they'll find you. And if we get some guys this year coming out of these colleges and in this all-star game, you'll see that we have players at historical black colleges that can play in the National Football League.
Coach, when he flipped the number one recruit in the country, I know you saw it. I know it came across your timeline. I know, somebody told you about it. What were your thoughts when that happened?
Well, first of all, I got to give a young man some credit too, because at the end of the day, and his parents, you got to give them credit too, because you're talking about a talented individual. I've seen some highlights on the guy, and he could have went to Florida State and probably a lot of places, but he chose Jackson State. He chose to go to a place where probably one of the greatest cornerback in the history of football is coaching. And who can teach him better than Deion how to play the position? See, that's what people got to understand. And Deion made it straight, and he said the best that he could. If he's good enough for me to recruit for his institution, why he not good enough to recruit for my institution? See, I think that's what happened. A lot of people got caught up with, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And he's good enough to go to Florida State, but he ain't good enough to come to Jackson? Or he too good to come to Jackson? And I think we got to get away from that. It's unfortunate people look at, they paid him, they did this. Hey, man, he got parents. This is a young man. He decides where he wants to go. Don't get mad because he chose Jackson. I'm not shocked because, number one, Deion is probably one of the best motivational speaker that I've heard. And if you get a chance to go sit in front of your parents and listen to Deion, I don't know what if I had to turn back the hands of time, he came to my house, hell, I'd be at Jackson too if you listen to Deion. But that's the kind of guy he is, man. He's a great guy, and I'm pulling for Deion.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Coach, I talked to legendary player and coach Doug Williams, right?
That's the man.
When I spoke to him, he said that if you were recruiting him, right, he'd probably be at Jackson State.
And if he were recruiting me, I probably would have been at Grambling. Doug, Coach Williams, the legend. First of all, you got to understand, Doug played for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm a Florida boy. I'm an hour and 23 miles from Tampa and 4 miles, Florida. So Doug was my hero, a black quarterback in Florida. You don't understand. Doug Williams was that dude. And so he meant so much to me that he didn't even understand. So when I started even considering this, one of my first calls were to Doug. Doug, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
Wow. So, I mean, of all you always talk about this, right? See you coaching in high school, right? I see you coaching Little League. You've been like coaching for a long time. Right? And so getting this spot was just, manifestation.
It was inevitable. It was inevitable. And it's not something we planned because my kids were out. Like Shador was going to FAU. Charlotte was already in South Carolina. Bossy had 1 more year of high school, playing basketball. So I was out. I was cool. I was ready to kick it. It's time for me to sit back and fish every day. And, I told him I was going to start stunting again. I drive pickup trucks. I said, when y'all get out, I'm going to start stunting again. We joke like that. But this opportunity came about, and several other opportunities came about. But I feel like God led me down the right direction. Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
When Rod Broadway unexpectedly resigned on February 2nd to take over at North Carolina A&T, Grambling football players were understandably shocked. When Doug Williams was named the new head coach, the emotions were a little different.
My first thoughts when he came back, I said, okay, Coach Williams coming back. It's a big opportunity to throw the ball because I know from when I was younger and I used to attend the Grambling games that he used to air the ball out.
I was really excited. I was like, man, we have a guy that's been to the Super Bowl. He's been a guy that goes and finds kids for the NFL. He knows what it takes to get to the next level.
This is Williams' second go-around at his alma mater. In his first stint, he won 3 SWAC titles in 6 years and compiled a 52-18 record. And while he might have been a little surprised to be back as the head Tiger, the pull of Grambling was always there.
Like you say, I think Grambling will always have a big part of coming back. But at the same time, it's opportunity to do what you always like doing, coaching and dealing with young people. Had an opportunity to go some other places, but, Grambling was the most intriguing. My mom, who's 81 years old, who likes football, she got a chance to come to the football game. I had 2 brothers who graduated from Grambling, 2 daughters who graduated from Grambling. I got a son that's playing there. And it's Grambling. So it was simple.
Family is certainly a big part of Williams' ties to Grambling, and now he has an entire roster of men that in many ways is like his extended family.
When he brought his staff in, he brought a whole bunch of Grambling Knights, people that played for Grambling and went to Grambling, stuff like that. We only have like one guy that didn't graduate from Grambling, and that's our defensive coordinator.
Coach Williams is more of a player's coach, but at the same time, he only lets you get away with so much, but he expects the most out of you.
Doug Williams' second stint at Grambling means a whole new attitude for Tiger football, and nowhere is that more apparent than right here in Media Day.
I came here last year and I was with him, and he didn't really want to do it. If you just talk about business and keep it, and that was it. But I was sitting here with Coach Williams right next to me, and he was talking about himself, talking about family and everything. And you can see he's just a people's person.
Well, I've always been who I am all my life, and I almost always realized that life is about people. And no matter where you go, you got to deal with people, and you got to learn how to deal with them, even at times when you don't want to deal with them. But my daddy told me something a long time ago, and he told me, he said, if you don't want to be bothered, stay home.
Doug Williams is at home on the Grambling campus and on the Tigers sideline, and he hopes to make Grambling the home for yet another SWAC title. Paul Boron for CST Tonight.
Doug Williams' first play call of the spring caught everyone off guard. Claiming the school has not lived up to their end of contract promises, the Grambling legend is suing the university.
You know, it is what it is. It's a situation that has not been worked out over the last few months, and, that's where we are.
Doug has the big G in his heart.
Williams contends that in February of 2011, he negotiated a deal with the school president that would pay him incentives if Grambling won a SWAC championship. He says that agreement was never sent to the University of Louisiana System Governing Board to be voted on. Williams also contends that Grambling's president later asked him if the original contract could be renegotiated. With the lawsuit pending, Williams says he'll keep his focus on the field and not on the courts.
Oh, I get up early in the morning and I'm still in the office, and because this is what I do. And unfortunately, we're here. And whatever goes from here, that's what we have to deal with. But it's not going to change my attitude as far as being the coach at Grambling State University. In regard to what anybody might say, I don't think there's anybody on that campus who's more Grambling than Doug Williams.
In Grambling, I'm Aaron Dietrich for CST Tonight.
Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
This is Tell Me More from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin. Later, if you want to find out what actress Alfre Woodard likes to listen to relax or get inspired, we will tell you. But first, we want to talk football. This is the time of year when a number of schools are celebrating homecoming. But there was no homecoming football game at Jackson State University in Mississippi this past weekend. That's because a majority of players on the visiting team, Grambling State University, refused to play. The players said they wanted to call attention to unhealthy and unsafe conditions in their football facilities and unhappiness over turmoil in their coaching staff, including the firing of Super Bowl winning quarterback Doug Williams. Now, the strike is now over. Grambling players say that they will return to practice and to the field this weekend, but their move has sparked headlines around the country, and we wanted to talk more about why and what it all means. So we've called on Corey Dade. He is a contributing editor to The Root. He also played football at Grambling under legendary coach Eddie Robinson. Also with us once again, Dave Zirin. He writes about the politics of sport for the nation. He's also a regular in our barbershop segments, as is Corey Dade. Welcome back to you both. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks, Michelle.
So, Corey, for people who are not familiar with the Grambling tradition, he's, Eddie Robinson, for example, recognized now as the coach with the most all-time wins in NCAA Division I football. But, tell us more about the Grambling legacy and why it's such a big deal.
Right. For historically black colleges and universities, Grambling State is the Notre Dame as far as its football tradition. At one point, depending on how you read the record books, Coach Rob, as he's known, was the winningest college football coach in Division I history. There was a time before integration into college athletics that Grambling put out more NFL drafted players from college than any other school, black or white, in certain years. In
fact, the first black NFL quarterback to start in an NFL game went to Grambling.
That's correct, James Harris. And, of course, everyone knows Doug Williams, who was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. He came from Grambling State, one of our cherished graduates.
So what were the conditions that led the players to take this step?
Well, there's a list of them. We're talking just facilities that were under disrepair. We're talking about a weight room where there was mold and mildew, locker rooms that had mold and mildew, improper washing of jerseys and uniforms, which led to staph infections, which, as we know, can be deadly. The floor in the weight room was in disrepair. It was an accident waiting to happen in the locker room. And I will say, from my time being there, at Grambling, as storied as the program is, it has always been challenged with finances. It has always been challenged with providing, adequate accommodations. And, in this season, to cut costs, the university actually stopped sending their players on trips to games by plane. So they're taking 17-hour bus rides one way to play a game over the weekend and coming back another 17 hours. No wonder they're winless this year.
Dave, talk a little bit more about who you've written about this. Talk a little bit more about why you think this story is important beyond just this particular institution. And I would like to ask you to pick up on a little bit of the question of budget cuts, because some people might say, football programs, this is one of the reasons people criticize football programs, that they say they suck up enormous resources. So how is it possible that a D1 program doesn't have the facilities it needs?
This is a huge story for several different reasons, a story that extends well beyond the sports page. One reason is that what it's done is it's amplified for the country, because as you said, this has been a national Sports Illustrated style story, is that it has amplified the very difficult position that historically black colleges and universities are in right now. What's happening in the locker room at Grambling State reflects what's happening in the classroom, what's happening in the quad, what's happening in the student center, and this is happening at all HBCUs, and there's a reason for that. It's estimated that since 2009, under the Obama administration's education department, roughly $300 million has been cut from historically black colleges and universities. And on top of that, Governor Bobby Jindal from the state of Louisiana, he refused stimulus funds from the Obama administration while also cutting over $200 million in funds from higher education in the state of Louisiana. Now, what has that meant at Grambling? It's meant $5 million that would have been in the budget, not in the budget in 2009. $1 million last year that would have been in the budget, not in the budget. And when you're talking about players doing things like rationing among themselves weightlifting supplements, to make sure that the players who lift the most get supplements afterwards so their bodies can be replenished because there's not enough to go around, then each of those dollars actually counts for something. So what you're talking about is a reflection in the athletic department of what's happening on the campus.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the player boycott by the football team at Grambling State University in Louisiana. The players at the storied program, the majority of them refused to play at a homecoming game last week in Jackson State University. It sparked national attention. So Corey, I also want to mention that you're National Secretary of the National Association of Black Journalists, and I understand that your organization got involved when the student paper at Grambling tried to cover the issue. Could you tell us about that side of the story?
Yeah, the student paper, the Grambling, which I actually wrote for when I was in college there. Two of the staffers there were disciplined by the university for their reporting, principally posting photos of the conditions, the deplorable conditions of the athletic facilities on Twitter. And one was fired, one was suspended. Now, those measures have since been reversed over the past day or so, but the National Association of Black Journalists was asked to weigh in, and we did. We condemn that decision for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is this amounts to censorship. If we are supposed to be training our student journalists to be free and independent of the power structure that they cover, then to censor them for their coverage is just unethical.
Are the football players being punished for their stance?
No, and that's an interesting point. So the student journalists are punished for their coverage, but the football players, the university has been very clear in saying, this is sort of a family matter, and we're not going to, we respect their points of view. We may disagree about the extent of the circumstances, but they're not going to be disciplined at all for their boycott.
I understand that a local businessman has also stepped in saying that he is going to help to see that these facilities get upgraded. But Dave, again, I want to ask you about what you think the larger meaning of this story might be.
Yeah, well, there's another reason why this story has become a national sensation. Because right now, as we speak, there is a lightning rod issue in college sports, which is about how many rights do these college athletes actually have. And there have been players who've been writing the phrase APU on their uniforms. At some of the biggest schools in the country, APU stands for All Players United. And players are organized. It's so different from Grambling State, though, because these are players at the big money schools who see millions of dollars flowing into their program. They see their coaches making millions of dollars. And they're asking questions like, why don't I have workers' compensation? Why don't I get full health benefits? Why isn't my education guaranteed for 4 years? Why is my scholarship renewed on an annual basis? Where is the money going? Which is very different from Grambling, which is asking the question, where is the money, period? Why is my weight room in disrepair? Why is my locker room an accident waiting to happen? But because these things dovetail together, even though Grambling State is distinct from the APU movement, it turned it into the kind of story where, for example, on ESPN, they were doing round-the-clock updates about what was happening on Grambling, because it touches a much more sensitive nerve. If in politics timing is everything, the timing of the Grambling State players could not have been better.
Corey, I have to ask you another highly regarded historically black college at University Spelman College recently made news in a different way. This is an historically black college for women.
Right.
It recently made news in a different way, and their university president decided to terminate all intercollegiate sports and convert the entire athletic budget to fitness for everybody that she hoped everybody would participate in, including faculty and staff. And her argument was, we spend a huge amount of money on a very small number of students. And that, so clearly Spelman is not known for its producing kind of athletic stars, as is Grambling. As we mentioned, a number of, hundreds of pro football players have come out of Grambling. But is there any talk about the fact that perhaps the university just cannot afford the program anymore?
Not at all. Just not at all. For Grambling, football is its image. Next to the band, the marching band, football is what has given Grambling a national image, a national brand. Just to give you an idea how powerful that brand is, Eddie Robinson, because of his winning tradition, because of the brand at Grambling, was able to take his school to other parts of the country, long outside of the South, outside of Louisiana, and have these major games in major NFL arenas, stadiums, with other HBCUs, and Grambling was the draw nationwide. It becomes a big revenue generator for the opposing school and for Grambling. So the idea that this is somehow going to necessitate talks about cutting the program, not going to happen.
What have you been hearing from, because I know that you're in touch with former players like yourself, as well as current players. What are they saying about this? How do they feel about the coverage that this issue is receiving?
I think many of them, well, first of all, a lot of us are embarrassed. A lot of us are embarrassed about it because it's a black mark. It's a stain on the heritage of what it's like to play for Grambling. But beyond that, several of the players are actually thankful that this is getting air because, to Dave's point, part of this is about the empowerment of the student athlete. Many players at Grambling have long labored under lack of resources, subpar facilities, and they accept it as a trade-off for playing at Grambling at a Division I football program, but none of us liked those conditions. So the fact that it's gotten so bad and the fact that they stand up, I can't find a former teammate of mine who's not behind them.
Are you surprised that they did?
I am surprised that they did, in part because when you come to Grambling, it's like going to Notre Dame. You buy into the mystique. You buy into sort of the hierarchy of what it means to be at Grambling. And so, to actually step outside of the university and criticize it or criticize the football program usually does not happen at Grambling.
I confess I've seen the facilities at Notre Dame, and they are very different from the ones at Grambling.
Yeah.
A final thought from you, Dave Zirin, about where you think this goes. In recent years, there's been a lot of talk about improving conditions for players or just rethinking our whole relationship with these so-called student athletes. The whole question around whether student athletes should be paid, whether they should have course credit, things of that sort. Those conversations kind of bubble up, but nothing ever seems to happen. Do you see a tipping point in some ways around this issue?
Well, I think we've passed the tipping point. I think we're at the point where there are open discussions in the NCAA offices where they're saying to each other, we need to change or we will die. We will not exist, and we will, in the future, college athletes in revenue-producing sports will be treated like campus employees instead of like student athletes. And so they are discussing how to change themselves to meet the 21st century. And the 21st century is a place where college football programs sign $6 billion contracts with major networks, where coaches make literally 100 times what they made 30 years ago. And you cannot have a status quo in terms of the position of the athletes and their rights like it was in the past because the financial situation is so dramatically different.
Dave Zirin is a regular on our Barbershop Roundtable. He's sports editor for The Nation. That's a progressive magazine. Corey Dade is contributing editor for The Root. He's also secretary of the National Association of Black Journalists and an alumnus of, and played some football at, Grambling State University in Louisiana. They were both kind enough to join us in our Washington, D.C. studios. Thank you both so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
This is a bombshell that has taken students and alumni by surprise. Dr. Bynum appears to have been popular on campus, but now Jackson State prepares for changes at the top of its leadership after news of his shocking arrest.
Dr. William Bynum, Jackson State's 11th president, now out after a weekend arrest stemming from charges in a prostitution sting in the city of Clinton. Bynum was arrested late Saturday night in an undercover operation by Clinton police at the Fairfield Inn and Suites.
It's my understanding that he was arrested. He was booked into the Clinton Police Department and bonded out shortly thereafter.
He was charged with procuring the services of a prostitute, simple possession of marijuana, and providing a false statement of identity. Another JSU employee, Dr. Shonda McCarthy, director of the university's art galleries, was also charged with procuring services of a prostitute along with possession of marijuana while operating a motor vehicle. The arrest stunned JSU's student government president, Jordan Jefferson.
Students are very upset about the situation. We love Dr. Bynum. He was a great personable person, very outgoing, and was a great person overall. So everybody's sad about the situation, the resignation. But we're going to keep a positive attitude and keep pushing.
Bynum and McCarthy are just two of the 17 people nabbed in the two-day Clinton prostitution sting. 2 men and 2 women arrested in the operation are from Memphis heading to Atlanta and are raising detectives' concerns.
We suspect, based on evidence recovered and statements obtained, that these 4 people may be part of a larger-scaled, multi-state ring.
Back on Jackson State's campus, an interim president was named Tuesday by the State Institution of Higher Learning's Board of Trustees, just hours after Bynum's resignation. Thomas Hudson served as special assistant to the president and chief diversity officer. Jefferson is pleased with the choice.
Me and Mr. Hudson already have a very close relationship. I worked with him before with issues on campus and other things as well, and he's also helped me as a person as well. So I know the university is in good hands.
Now, SGA President Jefferson tells me that he's going to be part of IHL meetings in the coming weeks as the board works to select Jackson State's next president. He says he and the thousands of students on campus will keep a positive attitude as the university moves forward. Troy Johnson, 16, WAPT News at 10.
Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this. Oh, how do I start this? My wonderful governor and our beloved mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. I need y'all to come together. I need you both to put differences aside. Well, Prime, you don't know the extent. Yes, I do. I got people. I know somebody that knows somebody that knows something about that. We got to focus on solvency for the problem that we have with this water. Here we go again. We're in a complex today. No water pressure. And we have solvency. We have a plethora of people that desires to help bring solvency to this problem. We just need to get together. Guys, you guys got to huddle up. Let me tell you something. I hadn't been in love with every darn teammate I've ever had or coaches. But somewhere or another, we put our differences aside and huddle up. And before we broke that huddle to go execute that play, we were on one accord because we had to win. We had to win. You both got to win. You got to win with the people. You got to win just personally. You got to win nationally. Forget the media. What that is, that forget that. You got to win. And I want you to win. I adore both of you, and I feel like both of you are for our people. And we have some good people here in Jackson, Mississippi. All they want is hope. But dealing with this water mess consistently, that dissolves hope instantaneously. Let's get together, huddle up, and win. I believe in both of y'all. God bless. God bless. Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
So let me ask you this: as far as collaboration, how important? Because obviously Jackson State is getting all the attention right now.
And we get all the attention because we're winning.
No, I'm not. I'm saying you should get all the attention.
Right.
But I'm just saying, how important is it to collaborate with other teams in the SWAC, other HBCUs to kind of?
You mean the coaches?
Yeah, share information, share resources.
All the time.
Okay.
I've got several of the coaches on the Zoom call and say, let's talk about our biggest nemesis or detractors or cancers. And we just talked about it. And ironically, everybody's dealing with the same foolishness, but people just don't talk about it. But this is the problem. I could say stuff. Coach George could say stuff. Coach Hugh Jackson could say stuff. You know, you got NFL type guys, excuse me. But some guys that don't have that, they can't elaborate and talk about the dysfunction that they're dealing with because they're subject to be fired. And when we do it, you may not like it, but I'm not lying. So if I'm saying, how are we gonna be on TV? You don't even sell out a darn home game. So who gonna go want to film an empty stadium? They may not like it, but I ain't lying. How can we have 60,000 people in a darn stadium? You talking about we sold out, and I checked the receipts and we done sold 28,000 tickets. Now y'all better find out who's stealing because that affects my pocket. You may not like it, but I ain't lying. So it's a lot of stuff like that, and it's more that goes on that we got to address. And I just have the audacity to address it because it's for the kids. It's for the kids.
Yeah, when I hear you speak, I mean, obviously you represent Jackson State, but you're speaking for the entire conference.
That's it.
I think you were critical of Grambling, and you were saying, like, look, this, I think the word was pathetic, like their attendance.
You right down the street.
You should, right? So like.
You right down the street. And this is your biggest game of the season. I know you get down with Southern in the classic. You know, I know y'all can't wait to party for these classics.
Yeah.
And I get sick of that, these classics that ain't nobody making no money. But
we won't go there. I won't go there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you right down the street. This is your biggest game. Like, we the dogs. Like, we the ones you want to get. And you don't come to support that. And your coach has already sounded off. And I was really having his back. He's already sounded off about your attendance and your participation. Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
WAPT News begins with breaking news.
We do have breaking news. The Hinds County coroner has just confirmed that someone was shot to death, their body found in a car on Jackson State University's campus. We are going to 16 WAPT's Ross Adams, who is live on the scene right now. What do you know, Ross?
Once again, we are live outside the Jackson State University Department of Public Safety, the campus police department, but we have gotten little or actually no information from the police or campus administration about exactly what's going on. We have just gotten some new information from the Hinds County coroner. Sharon Grisham Stewart tells us that the victim who was found in that car, that Dodge Charger in the Tiger World parking lot, was a male. That person was shot. This is a homicide investigation. The coroner did not tell us how many times that person was shot, but she did tell us that that person was male. We don't know if this was a student or someone who was visiting campus. We've heard a lot of speculation about the identity of who that person is, who was shot, allegedly, and the body was removed from the Dodge Charger this morning, late this morning, and we are still waiting. It's more than 5 hours now. We're still waiting to get any official information from the university about what happened. We're hearing also the same speculation from students, from people visiting campus for the big SWAC championship game between JSU football team and the Southern University tomorrow. So everyone is in the dark, wanting to know more about the situation. For now, we're live at Jackson State University. Ross Adams, 16 WAPT News.
All right, Ross, thank you again. Just to recap, a male victim found in a vehicle on Jackson State's parking lot on the campus. This is a homicide investigation, according to authorities. We will continue to follow this and have updates here on 16 WAPT. Now back to regular programming.
Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this. Start off by saying, God bless you, appreciate you and everything. I'm pissed off right now because I had mixed emotions. We won, the kids played really well. But while the game was going on, somebody came in and stole every darn thing I had in my locker room.
Oh
the
my
coach's
God.
office.
Oh my God.
Yeah, credit cards, wallet, watches. Thank God I had on my necklaces. How?
Oh, mercy.
So when I talk about quality, raising standards, and that goes for everyone, man. Not just the people on the field, not just the coaches, not just the teachers, not just the faculty, but that's everybody, security in everybody. So how do you think it feels coming back after just teary-eyed because the guys have presented me with the game ball, one of the best moments I've ever had in my professional sports career emotionally. And then you go into your locker room, your coach's office to digress, and you notice and you don't even have a phone to call your mama, to call your girl, to call your kids because it's been stolen. You don't even have the Scully hats that you wore here. We're gonna find out who did it. Let's flush that. Jackson State, D I love. Wonderful game. Defense played the butts off. You guys, I'm 100. Y'all know how I get down. That pissed me off today, man. And that, y'all know, come on, man, that don't even make sense. So I'm very transparent, and I'm gonna always be transparent with y'all. And I just ask y'all to be transparent and keep it 100 with me.
Coach, was it only your stuff that was
Only my stuff.
Okay.
Targeted, man.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. God bless y'all, man. Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this. You get elevated or you get terminated. Ain't no other way.
That's what Sanders told his players at Jackson State upon taking the head coaching job at the University of Colorado, a school in one of the top 5 conferences for college football. LA Times sports culture critic Tyler Tynes joins us now. Hey there.
What's happening?
Hey, so to start, if you could, just give us your gut reaction when you heard the news that Sanders was leaving Jackson State for Colorado.
I think on his face, it's not that big of a deal, right? You know, man takes a job, gets a better job in some respects, and he gets a big pay raise. But when you're a head coach at an HBCU, it comes with sometimes a bigger commitment, right? It's not only to these players, it's to this community, to the teachers, and to the fans that go back decades, to our traditions and everything else. And so when you leave Jackson State, especially after you sold a very specific dream, it's going to come with a fervor like no other.
So for people who don't follow college football as closely as you and I do, talk about what that dream is that Deion Sanders, that Coach Prime sold to this school. What did he give them?
He gave him a dream like any coach would. He said that God brought him to Jackson State to revive HBCU football. And listen, depending on how you think about football, Deion Sanders made good on his dream. ESPN came down, the whole world watched college football in the South in a way they hadn't in many years. But anytime a college football coach leaves an HBCU, particularly for a PWI,
a predominantly white institution,
it's going to ruffle a few feathers.
In the days since Deion Sanders announced that he was leaving Jackson State for Colorado, there's been some people who have been critical of him for turning his back on HBCUs. They've suggested perhaps even turning his back on black people. Is that a fair criticism to you?
I think anytime we run the risk of calling a man a sellout before we actually get there, it gets dangerous. We don't really know what Deion's motivations are yet, though in the past, Deion's motivations have been Deion. And so when the idea is that you've gone to a historically black college to sell a dream of prosperity and bringing them back to glory, I think it might be fair criticism to think he's done something wrong, especially in the way that he left Jackson State, in the way that he's talked to both his new players and his old players. There's fair game on Deion Sanders all around. Whether he sold out black people or not, I think is a stretch just too far.
You've documented a time when the best black players in the sport would sometimes opt to play for the best black coaches at HBCUs, but the college football landscape has changed since then. What do you think would need to happen for HBCUs to retain national level talent today?
We'd have to have a new sport. I would love nothing more than for every HBCU in the world to be able to go toe-to-toe with the best PWIs, the best Power 5s in the country. But the reality is that between certain legalese in our country and also certain roadblocks when it comes to football, our HBCUs have been stripped of their power, and that power is not coming back in most cases. Though we do think that a lot of these recruits could and should choose HBCUs over some other schools, I think it's wrong sometimes to ask teenagers to make big decisions like that.
Black players are now the majority of top-level college football players, and they're often the superstars who show up on ESPN no matter what school they're playing for. But black head coaches, those are far more rare in college football, let alone the NFL. So do you think Deion Sanders' hiring opens any doors there?
Anytime a black coach can get a head coaching job at a predominantly white university, it's a very, very, very big step, one way or the other. I don't know what Deion's hiring is going to do in terms of the ripples and effects for college football. I hope it means that more black folks get hired at the minimum.
Tyler Tynes is a sports culture critic for the Los Angeles Times. Tyler, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Dog, I don't want to hear the glory. Tell me the real story. So he started telling me what it was and what I was going to deal with and what I was up against. So he shot me 100. And I owe him today for that. He kept it 100, which prepared me for this.
Threat inbound to immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Esto es una emergencia.
This station has interrupted its regular program at the request of During this emergency, most
We are
stations
sick
will
and
remain on the
tired
news, providing
of
news and
being
information
sick and
to the
tired.
public in the current area.
Today it's time to stop singing and start swinging.
All broadcast cable system shall transmit its emergency action notification message.
We are coming to get our check.
You are now listening to P.A.R. Just People Activity Radio. And I'm your host, John G. Horse. Welcome. You have found your family in a peaceful place. P.A.R. is a family-friendly information distribution program seeking to inform non-white people, in particular black classified, and assisting in counter-racist codification. Go on, close your eyes and let that southern soul get into your spirit. Yes, indeed. Yes. Indeed. Let's get it.
Don't make me do
It's Coach Prime.
what you don't want me to do.
Listen to Coach Prime talking to Jackson State.
Don't make me go now.
Don't make him go.
Some other place you don't want me to go.
People Activity Radio can be found at peopleactivityradio.com. That's peopleactivityradio.com. On Twitter at JohnGHorse. On Instagram at j.g.horse. On our YouTube channel titled People Activity Radio. On SoundCloud channel titled People Activity Radio. Our Tumblr page titled People Activity Radio. On Spotify titled People Activity Radio. Apple Podcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and all other podcast platforms. If you find this information constructive, please subscribe, like, and share.
If you find this information constructive, please subscribe, like, and share. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Don't make me do
Don't make me do
what you don't want
me to do. Fellow black classified.
Don't make me go now. Some other place you don't want me to go.
You know how we do here on PAR, People Activity Radio, and old John G. think that he's feeling the beat. Run that thing. Yes, indeed. United, independent, compensatory code concept off up in here. I'd like to take this time to recognize all the John Henryism practitioners, hard-working, law-abiding citizens, blue-collar working listeners who took the time to dig into their pockets and distribute pennies, nickels, and dimes and contribute to old John G's CashApp. All contributions will be used to keep the show coming.
John G. Horse's Cash App is $JohnGHorse, capital G, capital H-O-R-S-E.
Yes, indeed. Don't make old John G bring the data. I don't want to do this with old John G. Got to report the news. A lot of y'all ain't gonna like me after this, but it is what it is. Yes. Indeed. This is P.A.R. People Activity Radio, and I am your gracious and humble host, John G. Horse. Welcome. You have indeed found your family in a peaceful place. The title of today's episode is Coach Prime. After the emotion, what can be learned and applied? Let me repeat that one more time. The title of today's episode is Coach Prime. After the emotion, what can be learned and applied? Yes, indeed. Where do we begin? Where do we begin is always the question. And I'm going to hit you with quick logic, and I'm going to slide on up out of here with data to close out the show. Now, as I always articulate in each and every show that I produce, I have concluded that we, the globe, are under a system of racism, white supremacy, systematic anti-blackness, or as Professor Kamal Kambon says, white terror domination. And under that system, those people who classify themselves as white and believe in the system, the religion, the government of racism, white supremacy, they are dedicated to dominating all those on the globe who are non-white, and in particular, those who are subject to black classification. And sometimes under this terroristic system, you have individuals that have melanin in their skin, in particular people who are subject to black classification, who seem to overcome the overwhelming odds against them. And these people we identify by way of W.E.B. Du Bois' term, the talented 10th. Now, the talented 10th, intellectually, in the education and the academic sector, will always thrive in all of the disciplines of the academia, for the lack of a better term. And they will be doctors, lawyers, they will be engineers, architects, they will be VPs, CEOs of various institutions. But for some reason, they never seem to be able to build anything for the group that they find themselves coupled with by way of melanin or black classification. They never seem to build anything of substance for the group subject to non-white, in particular, black classification. Exhibit A. Here in the United States, we have a plethora of higher learning institutions that are identified as HBCUs, historic black college universities. These are institutions that were built in the early 1900s, late 1800s to accommodate people subject to non-white classification, in most cases, that were offspring of prominent men who classified themselves as white and believed in racism, white supremacy. They said, I can't send my mixed race offspring, for lack of a better term, to white universities because that is illegal. We have outlawed that. But what I'll do, I'll build institutions for my mixed race offspring to get a higher learning, training, and all of the things that they should be able to get because they are my offspring. When I'll build these black institutions where they can go and they can be leaders. They can be leaders of the black community. That was the essence. That was the thought process in white supremacists founding and building these institutions. They later became historic black college universities where all people subject to black classification would be funneled into, and most of them would be agricultural universities. And there's a history behind that. We're not going to get into that, but that is what an HBCU is. And we have a plethora of these institutions that are still in operation in the United States. And most of the faculty members, not all, presidents, ADs, and faculty are majority black classified. Not all, but in most cases, there's a high percentage of faculty and higher brass of these institutions that are classified as black. Well, here in 2022, the great, legendary Neon Deion, prime time Deion Sanders, decided 3 years ago that he was going to debut his college coaching career, not at Florida State, his alma mater, not at Miami University, not at Alabama, not at Florida Gators. He said, I'm going to HBCU, Jackson State University. And immediately, all the lights were directed toward Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson State University. And to Deion's credit, from my research, upon him coming to Jackson State, I believe in 2020, I could be in error, he has brought roughly $30 million to the city of Jackson, Mississippi, amongst other tangible resources, to the institution of Jackson State University. Now, Jackson State is known for being the home, the alma mater of sweetness, Walter Payton. And that is all we know Jackson State for. You also know Jackson, Mississippi, for having a water crisis, as well as the state of Mississippi going through a welfare scandal with one of the high-profile people who are accused of participating in it, Brett Favre. Now, the state of Mississippi has a lot of things going on, and a lot of things that need to be corrected, and a lot of negative residue from racism, white supremacy. And by no means does old John G, does People Activity Radio, no means did we expect Deion, prime time, Deion Sanders to act as a governor of Mississippi, to act as the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, and fix all the problems that plague the citizens of Mississippi, in particular, the citizens that are subject to black classification. It's not his job. He was hired as Jackson State University's football coach. He is not the athletic director of Jackson State. He is Jackson State's football coach. And as the football coach, your number one job is to win football games. Now, prime time Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, went above and beyond his duties as football coach as it pertains to the institution that we know as Jackson State University. We're not going to go over all the accolades and all the accomplishments and all of the tangible resources that he summoned by way of the light that shines, Neon Deion, to the university, or Jackson State University. We're not going to go over all of that. If you want to know all of the things outside of winning SWAC championships and having unprecedented recruiting classes by primetime Coach Prime. Do a little research on it. But as it pertains to the city of Miss Jackson, Mississippi, as it pertains to the state of Mississippi, it's a whole bunch of stuff that affected Jackson State that Coach Prime has no power or influence to correct. One thing the institution could do was actually hire competent leadership and high brass to get a functioning, competitive institution and fight for the resources that are owed to that institution by way of state and the federal government. And you're going to be saying, what do you mean? Oh, John, you got Deion picture up on the thing. Why you ain't talking about Deion Sanders? Well, we know all about Deion Sanders and what he contributed to that institution. And if you're not a fan of college football, if you're not a fan of prime time, Deion, Coach Prime, then none of this stuff should concern you anyway. The lights were bright. The lights were brought by the shining star, the trailblazer, primetime Deion Sanders. And what did we see when the lights were shined on HBCUs, in particular, Jackson State University? But this goes for all of them. There's a lot of tacky, trashy mess going on at these higher learning institutions. Not all, but the ones that we have seen under the light of prime time Deion Sanders have corruption going on as high up as the presidents, have tacky, trashy, contractual fund operations going on, in particular Jackson State by way of primetime Deion articulating it. And when he articulated this, he said that there are other coaches in the SWAC that cannot speak on this because that would put their jobs into jeopardy. Primetime was literally working for free, but most coaches in the SWAC and other HBCUs get paid significantly less than primetime. And I think it's safe to assume that they depend on those resources so that they can support themselves and their family. So you don't want to put your job into jeopardy. You just put your head down and you go coach under unfathomable conditions in shady environment or workplace environment. And old John G here is here to say that yes, those of us who are subject to black classification, who find ourselves in positions of being faculty members and presidents and ADs and professors and whatever else you have at these higher learning institutions that we like to claim are near and dear to our heart, we should take the ultimate pride in making sure that these environments are in the best condition and operations are being done correct for the sake of the non-white, in particular black children that we are supposed to covet and cherish. We should make sure that everything's on the up and up at these institutions, but we are in an environment, a cesspool of racism, white supremacy. And unfortunately, from old John G's observation, and in particular, from John G's observation of prime time Deion Sanders being at Jackson State University, that ain't happening. What can be learned? We can learn to have united, independent, compensatory codification as it pertains to any and everything that we do. And out of all the individuals involved in Jackson State, the athletic director, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, the governor of Mississippi, the athletic director, and all of those individuals that seem to have more power and influence over the institution of Jackson State University, it looked like prime time Deion Sanders was practicing the most united, independent, compensatory codification. And before he went to Jackson State, he would be the last person that I thought that I would be accusing of practicing united, independent codification in any facet of people activity. But I could be in error. And that is either true or it's not true. And before I leave, I'm going to leave with a little bit of data that might give a little bit of insight on what's really going on in these HBCUs outside of the shady practices of presidents and ADs and professors and faculty members. Cue the clip.
Can you imagine being at a college that's missing out on as much as $500 million? Well, Tennessee State University, the only public historically black college and university in the state of Tennessee, doesn't have to imagine this. From 1957 to 2007, Tennessee State University was underfunded year after year as the Tennessee State Legislature failed to allocate funds to the school as it's required to do so under a state law. And Tennessee State isn't the only HBCU missing out on state funds. To talk about all of this more, we're joined now by Andre Perry. He's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. I mean, Tennessee, it's not the only state that owes money to HBCUs, as we just mentioned. Can you just give us a general sense of how pervasive this underfunding is of HBCUs?
Well, since the 50s, since Brown v. Board, the federal government ordered states to desegregate their schools. And most people just think that occurred in the K-12 arena, but it also occurred for higher education institutions. And by the way, most HBCUs are in southern states. Mm-hmm. And so there has just been a reticence to desegregate higher ed based on funding. And so many of these states created funding formulas that regularly just shortchange HBCUs. And we should assume that it's race because in many of the other institutions, predominantly white institutions, are receiving their full funding. And as a former dean at a university, I can tell you when it comes to making sure you pay what is owed, college university presidents make sure of that.
And what are some of the academic consequences that you see when an HBCU doesn't get enough state funds?
Well, when any university doesn't have adequate funds, they're not able to produce the kind of high-cost programs that might be in demand. And so I'll just give an example. Engineering. To run an engineering school, it costs a lot of money. And so if you're coming up short, guess what? You're not going to have an engineering program, or it's going to be theoretical in nature. And you won't have the equipment. You won't have the facilities to have people get the best out of that degree. In addition, you're not able to innovate. But what you're seeing in HBCUs, it's not just that they're not able to innovate or add certain degree programs. Their facilities are deteriorating. They're not able to keep up with the competition. And so this just leads to a lowering of standards, and eventually students won't want to go.
Now, there are some people out there who understand the underfunding of HBCUs as a problem with alumni giving. Alums can be blamed for a school's financial problems. So I'm curious, what do you make of that line of thinking?
When people say this is a problem of people giving, and by the way, Black people, in terms of the percentage of their overall income, give more than any other group. But what they're really saying is we're going to blame Black people for the lack of funding in Black institutions, abdicating the state's responsibility to do so. That's all that it's saying. We need to expose this lack of funding as really theft at a scale that is unprecedented. When you're talking about $500 million in Tennessee for one institution, I mean, this is theft at a scale in an area.
That's astronomical.
That's astronomical. And by the way, this is what fuels the economy, a highly educated workforce. And so if we're denying Black students, Black institutions, we're throttling the economy. So that's why this is just horrible, these findings. And we should go deeper. We should do an investigation at every state for every HBCU, and we should assume that they are being robbed.
Andre Perry is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Thank you very much for joining our show today.
Thanks for having me.
And there you have it. The data is the data. We are in a system of racism, white supremacy, and counter-racist codification. Replace the system of racism, white supremacy with a system of justice. Replace the system of racism, white supremacy with a system of justice. Ain't nothing gonna happen until that is done. One thing that we can do in the meantime is practice Black self-respect. You understand me? And do things correct. Act as if we are under this system, and every institution that we build should be countering the system. You should not have presidents, ADs, professors, and Lord knows who else on faculties of HBCUs or any other people activity subject to Black classification in institutions that are supposed to represent and be for cultivating the youth of that are subject to Black classification. You should not have the tacky, trashy mess going on. That is the standard. Produce justice in your household. You ain't gonna be able to produce it outside. Produce justice in the institutions, in HBCUs. Produce justice that you can control. You can control not stealing money. You can control building competitive facilities for your athletes and building competitive institutions, learning apparatuses for the students. As a governor of Mississippi, get the water right. As the mayor of Mississippi, of Jackson, Mississippi, fight for the funds that are owed to you. In particular, funds for your public works and funds for your state institutions. In particular, Jackson State University. Deion Sanders is not obligated to fix all the holes in Mississippi. To Deion Sanders, I give you a Black self-respect salute. I appreciate all that you have done for the institution of Jackson State, and I appreciate the light that you have shed on HBCUs. It is up to the collective, the masses of people subject to Black classification in the United States to fix it. It ain't up for you to carry everybody on your back. Now that is either true or is not true. And I hope I have contributed to less confusion. And always remember, keep learning and stay codified.
Please don't A strange world, that's a jungle.
is on. And you're the prey.